Please. Someone help me.
What the get off my porch? It's midnight.
I can't go back there, please.
Where are your parents? You can't just show up at random houses.
I don't have anyone.
That's not my problem, kid.
You have to help me. You're Marcus Chen, right?
How do you know my name?
Because my mom told me. Before she died.
The rain hammered against the porch roof like 1,000 tiny fists demanding entry. Marcus stood in the doorway of his suburban home, the warm light from inside spilling onto the wet wooden boards where a small figure stood shivering. His hand remained on the door, ready to close it, ready to return to the silence he'd carefully constructed over the past 3 years. The girl couldn't have been more than 7. Her dark brown hair clung to her face in wet strands, and her gray t-shirt was soaked through. She clutched a small backpack against her chest like a shield. But it was her eyes that stopped him, hazel eyes that held a strange familiarity he couldn't place.
Look, I don't know what kind of game this is.
It's not a game. I walked for 2 hours. My feet hurt.
She lifted one foot slightly, revealing worn sneakers with holes near the toes. Marcus felt something shift uncomfortably in his chest, but he pushed it down. He'd learned to ignore those feelings. They only led to disappointment and pain.
2 hours from where? Where do you live?
I lived in Riverside. With my mom. But she got sick last month and...
Her voice cracked, and she looked down at her feet. The rain seemed to fall harder, as if the sky itself was crying for this child's loss. Marcus felt his resolve weakening, but he tightened his grip on the door.
That's terrible, but you need to go to the police, not to some stranger's house in the middle of the night.
I tried. They put me with a family, but the man there, he scared me. He looked at me wrong. So I left.
Marcus's jaw tightened. He knew that look. He'd seen it in his own childhood, in the group home where he'd spent 2 years before his aunt finally took him in. But that was decades ago, and he'd promised himself never to get involved in other people's problems again.
That's still not my...
She said you'd help. She showed me your picture. She said if anything ever happened, I should find Marcus Chen on Oakwood Drive.
The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He stepped back instinctively, his heart suddenly pounding in his chest. Oakwood Drive. His address. His name. A picture of him. The rain continued its relentless assault, but Marcus barely heard it anymore.
What was your mother's name?
Sarah. Sarah Mitchell.
The world seemed to tilt. Marcus grabbed the door frame to steady himself, his knuckles turning white. Sarah Mitchell, a name he hadn't heard in 8 years. A name he'd tried to forget, tried to bury under layers of work and routine and deliberate solitude.
That's impossible.
You knew her? You remember?
Marcus's mind raced backward through time, through carefully locked doors of memory. Sarah Mitchell. They'd met at a community center fundraiser. She'd been volunteering. He'd been there representing his architecture firm. They'd talked for hours, laughed until his sides hurt. For 6 months, she'd been the light that broke through his carefully maintained walls. Then she disappeared. No calls, no messages, no explanation. Just gone. He tried to find her, asked mutual friends, even drove past her apartment. Empty. It had taken him 2 years to stop thinking about her every day.
Come inside. Just for a minute.
He stepped aside, and the girl hurried in, dripping water onto his hardwood floor. Marcus closed the door, shutting out the storm, but unable to shut out the chaos now swirling in his mind. He grabbed a towel from the bathroom and handed it to her.
Dry off. Then you're going to explain everything.
Okay.
She rubbed the towel over her hair and face, her small hands trembling. Marcus watched her, searching for any resemblance to Sarah. The eyes, maybe. The shape of her chin. Or perhaps he was imagining it, desperate to make sense of an impossible situation.
How did Sarah know where I live? I moved here 4 years ago.
She kept track of you. She had newspaper clippings about your buildings. And she looked you up online sometimes.
The confession landed in the quiet room like a stone in still water, sending ripples of confusion and anger through Marcus's carefully ordered world. Sarah had been watching him from afar while he'd spent years trying to move on.
Why? Why would she do that and never contact me?
She said she had to protect you. That's what she told me when I asked about my dad.
The words hung in the air between them, heavy and impossible. Marcus felt his legs weaken, and he sat down heavily on the couch. The girl stood in the middle of his living room, still clutching her backpack, water pooling around her feet.
You're what?
My dad. She said my dad was a good man who deserved a better life than she could give him. She said she left so he could have that.
Marcus's hands started shaking. He pressed them against his thighs, trying to ground himself in reality. This couldn't be happening. Sarah had been gone for 8 years. This child was 7. The math aligned in a way that made his chest tight and his breath short.
No! No! That's insane! If you were mine, she would have told me.
She was scared. She said she had problems, mental health problems. She didn't want to ruin your life.
The girl's voice rose in pitch, defensive and frightened. She took a step back, her eyes wide, and Marcus realized he'd stood up without meaning to, his hands clenched into fists at his sides.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to yell.
He sat back down slowly, forcing his breathing to steady. The girl relaxed slightly, but didn't move closer. The towel had fallen to the floor, forgotten.
She kept a box with letters she never sent and pictures. She showed them to me before she got too sick.
Do you have this box?
Some of it. In my backpack. The foster home kept most of her stuff.
With trembling fingers, the girl unzipped her backpack and pulled out a worn manila envelope. She held it out to Marcus, her arm extended fully as if afraid to get too close. He took it carefully, noting how light it felt, how the paper had softened with age and handling. Inside were 3 photographs and a folded letter. Marcus's hands shook as he pulled out the first photo. It showed him and Sarah at a beach, arms around each other, both laughing. He remembered that day. They'd driven 2 hours to the coast, spent the afternoon building sandcastles like children. The second photo made his breath catch. Sarah, visibly pregnant, sitting in what looked like a small apartment. She was smiling, but her eyes held a sadness that cut through him even now. She'd been alone, carrying his child alone.
Why didn't she tell me?
She thought you'd stay out of obligation. She said you'd mentioned once that you never wanted kids, that your childhood was too messed up to risk repeating it.
The memory surfaced like a ghost. A late-night conversation over wine, both of them sharing their fears and traumas. He'd talked about the group home, about watching children shuffle through the system, broken and forgotten. He'd said he never wanted to bring a child into a world where he might fail them the way his parents had failed him. But that had been theoretical, abstract. Not this real child standing in his living room. Not Sarah carrying his baby alone because she'd thought he didn't want it.
I would have tried.
She said that's what scared her most. That you'd try and regret it. That you'd look at me one day and see a mistake.
Marcus unfolded the letter with careful hands. The paper was thin, worn from being folded and refolded many times. Sarah's handwriting covered the page in familiar loops and curves. Marcus, I know I'm a coward for leaving this way, but I heard you that night, talking about your fears of becoming a father. I saw the panic in your eyes, and I thought about my own mind, the depression that comes and goes, the anxiety that sometimes makes it hard to breathe. I couldn't trap you in that. I couldn't let you sacrifice your dreams for a child you didn't want. So I'm leaving. I'm keeping our baby, but I'm setting you free. Maybe one day she'll find you, and you'll be ready. Maybe not. Either way, you deserve the choice I never gave you. I'm sorry. I love you. I always will. Sarah.
She was wrong. She was so wrong.
Tears streamed down Marcus's face unchecked. The girl watched him with those hazel eyes that were definitely Sarah's, waiting to see if this stranger would accept or reject her the way the rest of her short life had been a series of acceptances and rejections.
Are you mad at her?
I'm mad at the situation. I'm mad at myself for saying things that made her think I wouldn't want you. I'm mad at the universe for taking her away before I could tell her she was wrong.
He looked up at the girl properly for the first time, really seeing her. She had Sarah's eyes and chin, but his straight hair, his olive-toned skin, the same slight tilt to her eyebrows when she was uncertain.
What's your name?
Lily. Lily Rose Mitchell.
Rose was my mother's name.
Really?
Lily's eyes widened slightly, and for the first time, a hint of something like hope crossed her face. Marcus nodded, a bitter smile pulling at his lips. Sarah had given their daughter his mother's name. Another secret message he was only now receiving.
You must be exhausted. And hungry.
A little.
Marcus stood and walked to the kitchen, Lily following a few steps behind, still maintaining that careful distance. He opened the refrigerator, staring at the sparse contents. Leftover takeout, some eggs, bread. The food of someone who'd stopped really living years ago.
I can make you a sandwich. Or scrambled eggs?
Sandwich is good. Thank you.
He made her a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Cut it into triangles the way he remembered his aunt doing for him as a child. Lily sat at the kitchen table, eating slowly, her eyes moving around the room, taking in the minimalist decor, the clean lines, the absence of photographs or personal touches.
Do you live alone?
Yes. For 3 years now. I was married, but it didn't work out.
Because of what happened with my mom.
Marcus paused in the act of pouring himself coffee. The question was too perceptive for a 7-year-old, but then again, children who'd been through trauma often develop that kind of insight far too early.
Partly. I never told my ex-wife about Sarah. I thought I'd moved on, but I hadn't really. I was just existing.
It was more honest than he'd been with anyone in years, possibly ever. But something about this surreal night, about this child who might be his daughter, made lying feel impossible.
Mom said existing isn't the same as living.
Your mom was a smart woman.
She was sick a lot. In her head, I mean. Some days she couldn't get out of bed. Other days she was really happy and we'd do fun things. I never knew which mom I'd wake up to.
The confession broke Marcus's heart. He thought of Sarah, alone with a child, battling her demons without support or help. He thought of all the ways he could have made a difference if only she'd trusted him with the truth.
That must have been really hard for you.
Sometimes. But I loved her anyway. Even on the bad days.
Lily finished her sandwich and folded her hands on the table, a gesture that seemed too formal, too adult for such a small child. Marcus wondered what else she'd had to grow up too fast to handle.
Lily, we need to figure out what to do. If what you're saying is true, if I'm really your father, we'll need to do a DNA test. And we'll need to contact the foster care system and let them know where you are.
No. Please don't send me back there.
I'm not going to send you anywhere tonight. But we have to follow the law. If you're really my daughter, I have rights. We can figure this out properly.
Lily's fear didn't abate, but she nodded slowly, recognizing perhaps that this was the best offer she was likely to get. Marcus glanced at the clock. Nearly 1 a.m. The rain had softened to a steady drizzle.
For tonight, you can sleep in the guest room. Tomorrow we'll start making calls.
You're not making me leave?
Not tonight. Tonight you're safe here.
The word safe seemed to unlock something in Lily. Her shoulders dropped, the tension draining from her small frame. Marcus led her upstairs to the guest room, a space he'd furnished but never used, decorated in neutral beiges and grays. He found clean sheets and made up the bed while Lily stood in the doorway, still clutching her backpack. When he finished, he turned to find her staring at a small framed photograph on the dresser, the only personal item in the room. It showed Marcus with his aunt, taken years ago at his college graduation.
Is that your family?
That's my aunt. She raised me after my parents couldn't anymore.
What happened to your parents?
My father left when I was 6. My mother tried, but she had problems. Like your mom. She couldn't take care of me, so I went into foster care until my aunt found me.
Lily looked up at him with new understanding in her eyes. They were more alike than he'd realized. Both children of broken homes, both shaped by absence and struggle.
Did you forgive your mom? For not being able to take care of you?
The question struck deep. Marcus had spent 30 years trying to answer it, oscillating between anger and compassion, between understanding and resentment.
Some days. Other days I'm still working on it.
That's honest.
You deserve honesty.
He showed her where the bathroom was, left out a clean t-shirt she could use as a nightgown. When he returned to say goodnight, she was sitting on the edge of the bed, looking small and lost.
Thank you for not turning me away.
Get some rest, Lily.
He closed the door partway, leaving it slightly ajar the way his aunt used to do when he was young and afraid of the dark. Then he walked back downstairs and stood in his living room, looking at the photographs and letters still scattered on the coffee table. Sleep didn't come easily. Marcus lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling, his mind replaying every conversation he'd had with Sarah 8 years ago, searching for clues he'd missed, warning signs he should have noticed. The way she'd sometimes grow distant, the sadness that would cloud her eyes even when she was smiling. At 6 in the morning, he gave up on sleep and went downstairs. He made coffee and sat at his kitchen table, Sarah's letter in front of him. He read it again, then again, each time finding new layers of meaning in her words. Around 7, he heard small footsteps on the stairs. Lily appeared in the kitchen doorway, still wearing his oversized t-shirt, her hair mussed from sleep.
Good morning.
Morning. Did you sleep okay?
Better than I have in weeks.
Marcus made her cereal, and they ate in companionable silence. Then he pulled out his phone and started making calls. First to a lawyer friend who specialized in family law, then to a DNA testing service, and finally, with Lily sitting next to him looking terrified, to Child Protective Services. The conversation with CPS was tense. Yes, they had a Lily Mitchell in their system. Yes, she'd been placed with a foster family in Riverside. Yes, she'd run away the previous night, and they'd been searching for her. When Marcus explained who he was and why Lily had come to him, there was a long pause on the other end of the line.
I want to file for emergency custody. I'm claiming paternity. We're doing a DNA test today.
The social worker's voice was skeptical but professional. They would need to verify his claims. They would need to do a home study. They would need documentation. But given the circumstances, they could grant temporary placement while the investigation proceeded. When he hung up, Lily was staring at him with wide eyes.
Does that mean I can stay?
For now. But Lily, if the DNA test shows I'm not your father, this gets complicated. They'll want to find your biological father or other relatives.
There isn't anyone else. Mom was an only child. Her parents died before I was born. And she was sure about you.
Marcus wanted to believe her, wanted to believe that Sarah had been certain that this child was truly his. But years of disappointment had taught him to guard his hope carefully.
We'll know for sure in a few days. Until then, you're staying here.
They drove to a clinic that offered rapid DNA testing. The nurse swabbed both their cheeks with professional efficiency, labeled the samples, and promised results within 72 hours. On the drive home, Lily stared out the window, watching the familiar streets of Marcus's neighborhood roll past.
What if it comes back negative?
Then we figure out the next step together. But Lily, regardless of what the test says, you were important to your mother. And she was important to me. That connection matters.
He meant it. Even if biology didn't link them, he couldn't just abandon this child to a system he knew could be cruel and indifferent.
Can I ask you something?
Of course.
Are you scared?
Marcus considered lying, offering reassurance and false confidence. But he'd promised her honesty.
Terrified. I spent my whole life avoiding this kind of responsibility. And now here you are, and everything I thought I knew about my past is changing.
I'm sorry.
Don't be. Fear isn't always bad. Sometimes it means you're about to do something important.
They spent the rest of the day in quiet domesticity. Marcus worked from home, keeping one eye on his laptop and one eye on Lily, who sat on the couch reading a worn paperback she'd pulled from her backpack. Around noon, he ordered pizza. In the afternoon, they watched a movie together. It was the most normal Marcus's house had felt in years. The presence of another person, especially a child, disrupted the careful isolation he'd built. And surprisingly, he didn't hate it. That evening, after Lily had gone to bed, Marcus pulled out his phone and opened a search engine. He typed in Sarah Mitchell's name, adding Riverside to narrow the results. What he found made his chest ache. An obituary from 6 weeks ago. Sarah Mitchell, age 36, died after a brief illness. Survived by her daughter, Lily Rose Mitchell, age 7. In lieu of flowers, donations could be made to mental health services. There was a photo, Sarah at what looked like a park, smiling at the camera. She'd aged since he'd known her, fine lines around her eyes, but she was still beautiful. Still the woman he'd fallen for all those years ago. Marcus read the obituary 3 times, each word feeling like a door closing on possibilities he'd never known existed. Sarah was gone. There would be no chance to ask her why, no opportunity to tell her she'd been wrong about him, no possibility of reconciliation or understanding. The next 2 days passed in a strange, suspended reality. Marcus called his office and took emergency family leave, a phrase that felt both accurate and absurd given the situation. He and Lily developed a routine, breakfast together, quiet work while she read or drew, simple meals, evening movies. They talked, carefully at first, then more openly. Lily told him about her school, about her favorite books, about the way her mother would sing old songs when she was happy. Marcus told her about his work, about designing buildings that would outlast him, about the strange satisfaction of creating something permanent.
Do you like your job?
I'm good at it. That's not quite the same as liking it, but it's close enough.
Mom said you should do things that make your heart feel big, not just things you're good at.
Your mom was wiser than I gave her credit for.
On the 3rd day, the phone rang. Marcus's hand trembled as he answered, Lily watching from the couch with anxious eyes. The results were conclusive. 99.9% probability of paternity. Marcus Chen was Lily's biological father. He hung up the phone and turned to look at her. She stood up slowly, her hands clasped in front of her, waiting for his reaction.
You're mine. You're really mine.
Is that okay?
Marcus crossed the room in 3 strides and knelt down so he was at her eye level. He opened his arms, offering but not forcing, giving her the choice. Lily stepped forward and wrapped her small arms around his neck. She was so light, so fragile, and yet she'd walked 2 hours in the rain to find him. She'd carried her mother's secrets and her own fears with a courage he wasn't sure he possessed.
It's more than okay. I didn't know I could feel this terrified and this grateful at the same time.
They stayed like that for a long moment, 2 people who'd been alone far too long, finally finding each other through loss and chance and Sarah's decision to write an address on a piece of paper. The following week brought a whirlwind of bureaucracy. Home visits from social workers who inspected his house and his life with clinical detachment. Court hearings where Marcus formally petitioned for custody. Background checks and character references and endless paperwork. Through it all, Lily stayed with him, her presence growing more comfortable, less tentative. She began to leave her books on the coffee table, to ask for specific foods at dinner, to laugh at his terrible jokes. Small signs of a child claiming her space in the world. But there was still one person Marcus needed to talk to, Helen Carter, his former neighbor and one of the few people who'd known him during his relationship with Sarah. If anyone had insights into Sarah's decision or her life after, it might be Helen. He drove with Lily to Helen's house on a Saturday morning. The old woman answered the door with surprise and immediate warmth, her eyes moving from Marcus to Lily and back again. Marcus Chen, I haven't seen you in months. And who is this lovely young lady?
Helen, this is Lily. She's my daughter.
Helen's expression shifted from cheerful to shocked to knowing in the space of a heartbeat. She stepped back and gestured them inside. Your daughter. Oh my word. Come in, both of you. This is a story I need to hear. They sat in Helen's living room, surrounded by photographs of grandchildren and great-grandchildren, tangible evidence of a life fully lived. Marcus told her everything, Sarah's disappearance, Lily's arrival, the DNA test, the custody proceedings. Helen listened with the patience of someone who'd heard many stories in her 70 years, her hand occasionally rising to her mouth, her eyes wet with tears by the time Marcus finished. That poor woman, carrying that burden alone.
Did you know my mom? I met her a few times, yes. She was lovely. Very kind, but very sad underneath. I remember thinking she was someone who'd been hurt deeply.
Did she ever contact you? After she left?
Helen hesitated, glancing at Lily before answering. Marcus noticed the pause and felt his stomach tighten. Once, about 2 years after she disappeared, she called me out of the blue and asked how you were doing. I told her you were engaged, that you seemed happy. She thanked me and hung up.
That's when I was with Jennifer. Before the divorce. She asked me not to tell you she called. Made me promise. I kept that promise until now because now it seems important for you to know she never stopped caring.
Marcus absorbed this information, another piece of the puzzle clicking into place. Sarah had checked on him, had wanted to know he was happy, and when she'd been told he was engaged, she'd probably assumed she'd made the right choice in leaving.
She talked about him sometimes, especially near the end. She said she hoped he'd forgiven her. I think, sweetheart, that he's trying his best to understand. And that's sometimes better than forgiveness.
Helen made them tea and cookies, asking Lily gentle questions about school and her interests, treating her with the easy warmth of someone comfortable with children. Watching them interact, Marcus felt a strange peace settling over him. On the drive home, Lily was quiet, looking out the window at the passing scenery.
She was nice. Helen.
She is. She helped me a lot after my divorce. Brought me meals, invited me over for holidays.
Do you have other family? Besides your aunt?
No. My aunt died 5 years ago. It's just been me since then.
Not anymore.
The simple statement carried a weight that made Marcus's throat tight. Not anymore. He had a daughter. He had family. After years of deliberate isolation, he was no longer alone.
No. Not anymore.
The custody process moved slowly, each day bringing new requirements and evaluations. Marcus hired a family lawyer who guided him through the complexities with professional efficiency. Character witnesses testified to his stability. His financial records were examined and approved. His home was deemed suitable. And through it all, Lily settled deeper into his life. He enrolled her in the local elementary school, watching with a mixture of pride and anxiety as she walked through the doors on her first day. He learned to braid her hair, badly at first, then with improving competence. He discovered she was allergic to shellfish, that she was excellent at math, that she had nightmares twice a week. The nightmares were the hardest part. He'd wake to the sound of crying from the guest room and find her tangled in sheets, calling out for her mother. The first time it happened, he'd frozen in the doorway, unsure what to do. But instinct overrode fear, and he'd sat on the edge of her bed and rubbed her back until she calmed.
It's okay. You're safe. I'm here.
I miss her so much.
I know. I know you do.
He couldn't bring Sarah back. Couldn't undo the years Lily had spent without a father or the months she'd watched her mother decline. But he could be present now. He could choose, every day, to show up. 6 weeks after Lily's arrival, the court granted Marcus full legal custody. The judge, a stern woman in her 50s, had looked at both of them over her reading glasses and delivered the verdict with finality. In the courthouse hallway afterward, Marcus knelt down and looked at his daughter, because she was fully, legally his daughter now, and felt the enormity of the responsibility settle on his shoulders.
This is real now. You're stuck with me.
Good. I was getting used to your terrible pancakes.
My pancakes are not terrible. They're rustic.
They're burned on the outside and raw in the middle.
Okay, yes, they're terrible. But I'm working on it.
They laughed together, and Marcus realized it was the first time he'd laughed genuinely in years. The sound felt foreign and wonderful, like discovering a forgotten language. That night, Marcus stood in the doorway of what was no longer the guest room, but Lily's room. They'd spent the previous weekend redecorating, painting the walls a soft lavender, adding posters of books and art, creating a space that felt like hers. She was already asleep, curled on her side, one hand tucked under her pillow. In the dim light from the hallway, she looked peaceful, the worry lines that had become too familiar on her young face finally smoothed away. Marcus thought about Sarah, about the choice she'd made 8 years ago. He still didn't fully understand it, might never fully agree with it. But watching Lily sleep, seeing the life they were building together, he felt something like gratitude mixed with his grief. Sarah had given him an unexpected gift. She'd given him a chance to be better than his fears, to prove that broken things could be repaired, that cycles of abandonment could be broken. The next morning was Saturday. Marcus made breakfast, scrambled eggs this time, safer than pancakes, and Lily appeared in the kitchen wearing mismatched socks and one of his old t-shirts she'd claimed as pajamas.
Can we do something today? Together?
What did you have in mind?
There's a park Mom used to take me to sometimes. It has swings and a pond with ducks. Could we go there?
Marcus heard what she wasn't saying. This was a connection to Sarah, a way of keeping her mother's memory alive. He understood that need, had his own ways of holding onto the people he'd lost.
Get dressed. We'll bring bread for the ducks.
The park was 40 minutes away, in the part of Riverside where Sarah had lived. As they drove, Lily pointed out landmarks. The library where she'd gone to story time, the corner store that sold her favorite candy, the small apartment building that had been her home.
That's where we lived. 3rd floor, the window with the blue curtains.
Marcus slowed the car, looking up at the building. It was modest, well-maintained but worn. He imagined Sarah there, alone with a baby, then a toddler, then a growing child, working whatever jobs she could find, managing her mental health, doing her best with limited resources and no support.
She was strong. Stronger than she knew.
That's what the social worker said at the funeral. That Mom had tried really hard.
They continued to the park, a sprawling green space with mature trees and a small pond. Lily led him to the swings, and for an hour, they were just a father and daughter on a Saturday morning, pushing and pumping, trying to see who could go higher. Afterward, they sat by the pond, tearing up bread and tossing pieces to the eager ducks. Other families moved through the park, parents pushing strollers, kids kicking soccer balls, couples walking hand in hand. Normal life, the kind Marcus had convinced himself he didn't want.
Do you think she's watching? Mom, I mean.
I don't know. I'm not sure what I believe about that kind of thing.
Me neither. But I hope so. I hope she knows I found you. That you didn't turn me away.
Marcus put his arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. She leaned into him, solid and real in his.
I think if she is watching, she's probably relieved. And maybe a little bit smug that her plan worked.
She would be. She liked it when things worked out.
They stayed until the sun was high overhead, then drove home in comfortable silence. That evening, Marcus pulled out his laptop and started looking through old photographs stored in the cloud. Pictures from his time with Sarah that he'd archived but never deleted. He showed them to Lily, telling her stories about each one. The time they'd gotten lost on a hike and had to be rescued by park rangers. The evening they'd tried to cook an elaborate meal and set off the smoke alarm. The quiet morning they'd spent at a coffee shop, reading side by side in companionable silence.
You really loved her.
I did. Very much.
And she loved you. She told me that, near the end. She said she'd made a lot of mistakes, but loving you wasn't one of them.
The confession broke something open in Marcus's chest. He'd spent years wondering if what they'd had was real, if he'd imagined the connection, if Sarah had left because she'd realized he wasn't worth staying for.
Thank you for telling me that.
You should know. You should know you were important to her. To both of us.
Marcus wiped his eyes and closed the laptop. The past was still painful, still complicated, but it felt less like a wound and more like a scar, something that had hurt but was now healing. Over the following months, they built a life together. Marcus cut back his hours at work, realizing that designing buildings mattered less than being present for the daughter he'd almost never known. He attended school plays and parent-teacher conferences. He learned to check homework and pack lunches and remember permission slips. Lily bloomed in the stability. Her nightmares grew less frequent. She made friends at school. She started calling him Dad instead of Marcus, tentatively at first, then with growing confidence. They visited Sarah's grave together on what would have been her birthday. Lily brought flowers. Marcus brought a letter he'd written, all the things he'd never got to say. They stood in silence, then walked away hand in hand. Helen became a fixture in their lives, a surrogate grandmother who spoiled Lily with cookies and stories and unconditional affection. She told Marcus once, over coffee while Lily played in the yard, that she'd never seen him so settled. "You look like someone who finally figured out where he belongs."
I didn't know I was lost until I was found.
It was true. For years, Marcus had been drifting, existing without living, working without purpose beyond the next project. Lily had changed that. She'd given him a reason to come home, to plan for the future, to risk caring deeply again. A year after Lily had shown up on his doorstep in the rain, Marcus stood in his kitchen making pancakes. Real, edible pancakes that were neither burned nor raw. Lily sat at the table doing homework, occasionally asking questions, filling the house with the sound of her voice.
Dad, what's an archipelago?
A chain of islands. Like Hawaii or the Philippines.
Oh, that makes sense now.
The phone rang. Marcus answered, still holding the spatula, and found himself talking to one of his colleagues about a new project, a community center in an underserved neighborhood. They wanted his input on the design, his expertise in creating spaces that felt welcoming and safe.
Actually, I have some ideas about that. Can I bring my daughter to the initial meeting? I think her perspective might be valuable.
The colleague agreed, surprised but pleased. When Marcus hung up, Lily was watching him with curious eyes.
You want me to come to a work meeting?
You've experienced foster care and temporary housing. You know what makes a space feel safe or scary. Your opinion matters.
Something shifted in Lily's expression, pride mixed with surprise, as if she'd just realized that her difficult experiences had value, that they'd made her an expert in something important.
Okay, I can do that.
The meeting happened the following week. Lily sat in the conference room, initially shy, but when asked direct questions about what made her feel safe in a building, she spoke with confidence. Wide windows for natural light, spaces where you could see exits, colors that felt warm but not overwhelming. The architects took notes. Marcus watched with pride as his daughter contributed meaningfully to something that would help other children in difficult situations. He thought Sarah would have been proud too. That evening, as they drove home, Lily was quiet, processing the experience.
Do you think I could do that when I grow up? Help design buildings?
You can do anything you want. But yes, I think you'd be excellent at it.
Could you teach me?
Absolutely. We'll start with the basics. How to see space, how to think about function and beauty together.
He thought about his own childhood, about the absence of mentorship and guidance, about having to figure everything out alone. He'd promised himself that Lily would have different experiences, better ones. They stopped for ice cream on the way home, sitting outside the shop as the summer sun set in streaks of orange and pink. Lily ate her chocolate cone methodically, making it last, while Marcus watched the easy way she inhabited the world now, less guarded, more open.
Can I ask you something? Are you happy here? With me?
Lily considered the question seriously, not rushing to reassure him, but genuinely thinking about her answer.
Yeah. I mean, I still miss Mom. I probably always will. But I'm happy too. Is that weird?
No. I think that's human. We can hold multiple feelings at once. Grief and joy aren't opposites. They can exist together.
Mom would want me to be happy. She said that, before she died. She made me promise I'd find a way to be okay.
You are okay. You're more than okay. You're brave and smart and kind.
I learned from the best. Mom taught me to be kind. You're teaching me to be brave.
Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. A year ago, he'd been alone, convinced he was content with his isolated existence. Now he had a daughter who challenged him daily to be better, to try harder, to risk more. They finished their ice cream and drove home as twilight deepened into night. The house that had once been silent and sterile now felt alive with possibility. Lily's drawings covered the refrigerator. Her books spilled off shelves. Her laughter echoed in rooms that had been quiet for too long. That night, after Lily had gone to bed, Marcus sat in his living room and pulled out the letter Sarah had written all those years ago. He'd read it dozens of times now, each time finding new meaning. She'd thought she was protecting him by leaving. She'd thought he would see their child as a burden, a mistake. She'd been wrong, but he understood why she believed it. He'd been so focused on his own fears back then, so convinced he'd repeat his parents' failures. But fear and love weren't mutually exclusive. He was still terrified sometimes, of failing Lily, of not being enough, of the 1,000 ways he could damage this child who'd already been through so much. But the fear didn't stop him from trying. If anything, it made him more careful, more intentional. Marcus folded the letter and put it back in its envelope. He didn't need to read it anymore. He'd made his peace with Sarah's choice, understood it even if he didn't fully agree with it. What mattered now was the present and the future. The following weekend, Lily asked if they could visit her mother's grave again. They drove to the cemetery with fresh flowers, and Lily knelt beside the headstone, speaking quietly to her mother.
Hi, Mom. I wanted you to know I'm doing okay. Better than okay. Dad's teaching me about architecture. I have friends at school. We're a family now, like you wanted.
She paused, wiping her eyes, then continued.
I still wish you were here. I wish you'd gotten help, that you'd told him about me earlier. But I understand why you didn't. You were scared. And sometimes being scared makes us do things that don't make sense to other people.
Marcus stood a few feet back, giving her privacy but close enough to offer support if needed. When Lily finished and stood up, he stepped forward and placed his own flowers next to hers.
Thank you, Sarah. For Lily. For giving me a second chance at this. I promise I won't waste it.
They walked back to the car hand in hand. On the drive home, Lily asked if they could get a dog. Marcus, who'd never wanted pets because they tied you down and required commitment, found himself saying yes without hesitation.
Really? We can really get a dog?
Really? But you're responsible for feeding it and walking it.
I will. I promise. Thank you, Dad.
They spent the afternoon at an animal shelter, where Lily fell in love with a scruffy terrier mix who'd been abandoned and was now looking for a home. The parallel was, this story reminds us that sometimes the greatest transformations in our lives come not from careful planning, but from unexpected arrivals in the ring. Marcus thought he had protected himself by building walls of isolation, convinced that distance was safer than connection. But Lily's appearance shattered that illusion, proving that some responsibilities choose us, even when we believe we've chosen to avoid them. Marcus's journey teaches us that fear of repeating the past doesn't have to define our future. He carried the wounds of abandonment, the scars of a childhood spent wondering why he wasn't enough. Yet when faced with his own daughter, he made a different choice. He chose presence over absence. He chose courage over comfort. He chose to break the cycle rather than perpetuate it. Lily wasn't just a child who appeared from nowhere. She was a mirror reflecting everything Marcus had been running from, and everything he was capable of becoming. She represented second chances, the possibility that broken things can be repaired, that people haunted by their failures can still rise to meet extraordinary moments with grace. Sarah's choice, though painful and imperfect, reminds us that people make decisions based on the stories they tell themselves about who they are and what they deserve. She believed she was protecting Marcus by leaving. She was wrong, but her love was real. And in the end, that love created a bridge between past and present, between fear and hope, between two people who needed each other more than either realized. This story proves that we are not prisoners of our histories. The child abandoned in foster care grew up to welcome an abandoned child into his home. The man who swore he'd never be a father became one with fierce dedication. The architect who designed buildings finally learned to build something more important, a family. If a 7-year-old girl appeared at your door in the middle of the night, soaked from rain, claiming a connection to your past you tried to forget, what would you do? Would you turn her away to protect your carefully ordered life? Or would you open the door and risk everything for the possibility of something real? Share your answer in the comments. Tell us about a time when an unexpected responsibility changed your life for the better. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that courage isn't the absence of fear but the choice to act despite it, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. We share stories about ordinary people facing extraordinary moments, about the choices that define us, and about the transformative power of showing up when it would be easier to walk away. Share this with someone who needs to remember that their past doesn't dictate their future. Share it with someone who's afraid to take the risk, to open the door, to say yes when everything in them wants to say no. Thank you for watching. And remember, the unexpected can terrify us, but it can also save us. A child appearing from nowhere isn't just a crisis. It's an invitation to become who we were always meant to be. One choice, one moment of courage, one decision to stay instead of turning away. These things can rewrite entire destinies. Never underestimate the power of showing up. Never forget that broken cycles begin with a single person who refuses to repeat them. And always remember, sometimes the family we're searching for is searching for us too, walking through the rain, hoping we'll be brave enough to open the door.